and welcome to the Chez podcast on Paris Underground Radio.
I'm Emily Monaco, fungus expert and professional consumer of cheese.
And I'm your resident wine expert, Caroline Connor.
And we both live in France, where wine and cheese are cornerstones of almost every meal, from the day-to-day to the extraordinary.
At Chez, we feature recipes submitted by home cooks like you and pair them with the perfect wine and the most complimentary cheese.
Today's recipe comes to us from Marie DeGross. She is a culinary tour guide and concièrge based here in Paris. And she is sharing a recipe that she first discovered while traveling to Caroline's hometown, Salade Lyonnaise.
Hey everyone, my name is Marie, and I'm a marketing manager turned food tour guide and concierge. I own Mille Mercis Marie, a food-focused travel agency based in Paris. Curiously, I had the pleasure of being trained by Emily herself when I left the confines of the corporate world in July 2015. We've collaborated over the years and continue to do so. Emily's the crazy cheese lady, and somehow recently, I've become the crazy Madeleine lady. In reality, even if I wanted to, I'm not equipped to be an at-home chef. I have a traditional Parisian apartment with a kitchen corner. In other words, a small sink, 2 burners, and a college-sized fridge. So naturally, when Emily asked me to talk about my favorite recipe and why, I almost declined the offer. But then I started thinking long and hard about my relationship to food and realized that I had a lot of stories to tell. So let me tell you one of my favorites, my relationship with lardons. Let me take you back to a weekend trip to Lyon with my friend Erin, where my love for this French staple and a salad you cannot make without them began. We were at a traditional Lyonnais bouchon or bistro called Comptoir à Belle on a cold, dark February night in 2013. We went there initially to eat their quenelle, a traditional dish from Lyon. But then I saw a salad with lardons on the menu, in Salade Lyonnaise. Then I realized it had a soft-boiled egg on top, and I'm thinking, hot salad? Why isn't there a hard-boiled egg on top instead? I know in the U.S. we do a lot of salads with chicken straight off the grill, but at this point in my French food career, I had only known the cold salade niçoise. I decided to order the salad, not because it was hot, but because just 1 year before, I had discovered the lovely world of the lardon, also known as pork belly, cut into small rectangular-ish cubes, used in a lot of very simple recipes that people make at home in France. When the bowl of frisée lettuce, croutons, lardons, and a soft-boiled egg gently placed on the top of the salad arrived at our table, the American in me didn't really know what to do with the runny egg. The server told me to just start mixing, and there you go. The start of my love of this simple salad and its lardons was born. In my 16-meter squared Parisian studio apartment, I do manage to make this super simple salad. It's usually when I actually feel like cooking, but more so when I'm in the mood for lardons. There's 4 ingredients and lots of pork fat. Just what I love. If you happen to be US-based and are inspired by my pork fat salad story, you can ask your supermarket or local butcher for pork belly sliced into thick strips like bacon and cut into lardons. They should know what you're talking about even if they first hesitate, though I'd probably drop the French accent. But what does food mean to you? Superior products? Technique? History? For me, it's stories and memories, and behind all of these are people.
Hello and welcome to Chez. Today we are going to be talking about our friend Marie's Salade Lyonnaise. Emily,
I know.
Have you ever had a Salade Lyonnaise?
I have eaten so many Salade Lyonnaise. Salade Lyonnaise, let's be quite frank, and I think Marie kind of conveyed this to us. Thank you, Marie, for this recipe. It's basically just a vehicle for eating bacon under the guise of it being something somewhat healthy.
I mean, the thing about French salads, people do love salad here, and you can get, they love a big salad. But a salad here, often it's a salade composée, where there's lots of different stuff. And there's regional salads that are basically 90% meat. This one is not that. The bacon is really important, the lardons, but it is definitely, there's still a lot of like greens, but you go to Bordeaux and you get like a duck gizzard salad and it's just like meat, and 4 pieces of rocket, you know?
Yeah, or like you can get salads here, like you're talking about these salad composés. Like you can get ones where it's like, it's basically a bed of lettuce atop which you have like fried potatoes.
Yeah.
It's like,
and like a big slice of ham.
right, of course.
Yeah.
And some chopped up Emmental cheese, because why not, right?
Exactly. This is a recipe actually that has been, well, so for those of you who don't know, even though you should by now, I live in Lyon myself. So I'm not in Paris, unlike everyone else. I live in Lyon. And so for me, it was fun to get this recipe because I'm just like, yeah, we're the culinary capital of France.
You really are. I mean, let's be quite honest. Like Paris has its bistros and that's fine, but Lyon is the culinary capital of France. And anybody who loves food needs to go to Lyon.
Come visit me, do a wine tasting. It's the greatest. But it's this salad also is just delicious. And it's funny because the first time I was introduced to a salade lyonnaise was actually when I was 18. I did a like summer cooking program at Leith's Cooking School in London. And that was my first ever cooking school. And I later ended up going to the Cordon Bleu and really studying to be a chef. But this was one of the first things we made was a salade lyonnaise. And that's how I learned how to poach an egg and how to make, you know, like a good, we did make salad dressing, and she has her salad dressing in here, just a really classic salad dressing with mustard and vinegar and olive oil. And it's so perfect, this salad, because the egg basically it just sort of melts into the dressing and it makes this really creamy, rich, wonderful thing. So it's it's
and
greatest.
you're using like a more bitter, more hearty kind of green, this frisée lettuce, which is so good, and it stands up to like being tossed with hot bacon and hot egg yolk. Like it doesn't just like wilt into a puddle of, you know, cooked lettuce, which, you know, cooked lettuce is nobody's favorite thing, but with the frisée it kind of stands up.
I could argue that I actually quite like a little bit of stir-fried. I do a little stir-fried lettuce sometimes. With if I have some funky lettuce that's on the end, I'll just fry it up with a little sesame oil and soy sauce. It's really good.
Stand corrected.
But that's not what this is.
But yeah, I mean, and the thing is, I've actually been to the restaurant that she got this, that she had her
Comptoir
first.
Abel.
Bistro Abel or Comptoir Abel that in Lyon. So I had my first salad lyonnaise in a restaurant in New York, where obviously it's like twice as expensive and you get like these minuscule little bits of bacon. And then I had it at the Bistro Abel. And like, I'm not exaggerating. This is not hyperbole when I say that these are like thumb-sized pieces of lardons. Like it is meat.
It's a lot. They're big chunks. You can totally do it with smaller ones. I see that a lot around town. They just buy the little allumettes, the little small ones that you can get here. It's funny, you know, in France, you can't really get American bacon, which is obviously the best bacon in the world, but
obviously
you really do have lardons everywhere. So lardons are just little bacon bites basically, and you buy them and you just buy them in a package. And I use them like seasoning. Like I put them in everything. And so there's just like always little bits of bacon in French food. So it's not great for vegans, but it's really good for everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. And little bacon bites, bigger than bacon bits, but bacon bites.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's perfect. What doesn't get better with bacon, honestly?
I love bacon.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now you have to pair cheese with this, which I think should be a fun exercise. And I hope you pick a traditional Lyonnais cheese.
Aha. So I did sort of think about this, and I was like, when I first started thinking about it, the obvious answer to me came from the traditional Lyonnais bouchon. So for those who don't know what a bouchon is, and Caroline, maybe you need to cover your ears for this, a bouchon is kind of the local answer to a bistro. And I know that I'm going to get harangued by any Lyonnais by saying that, but basically it's hearty food, convivial atmosphere. But what makes a bouchon super special and kind of exciting is that many of them have traditionally been run by women. So these women were known as the Mère Lyonnaise, and unsurprisingly, they were some of the most talented, dogged, hardworking cooks, and they invented a lot of the star dishes of Lyon that we still see in bouchon today. So when you go to bouchon, like much like when you go to a bistro in Paris and you expect to see the same menu everywhere of like beef bourguignon and steak tartare and all these things, at a bouchon, you're expecting to find the same dishes over and over and over. So Marie salad, the salade lyonnaise is a very common dish. You might find like pike quenelle sort of dumplings in like a creamy crayfish sauce. You're going to find like pâté en croûte, which is like a pâté that's wrapped in puff pastry and baked that way. Or you'll find andouillette, which is a tripe sausage. So it's like all this like, oh my God,
is disgusting.
I
would
will
rather die.
fight you to the death. I love andouillette.
Ew.
I love it. It
God,
smells.
I put some disgusting things in
so
my mouth, but that is the worst.
The BBC once wrote that it smelled like a bad toilet, and I was like, "That's correct." But
it smells
delicious.
like a public toilet.
It
no,
does,
I won't. I can't.
But so I mean, I was thinking, if that's the menu that we have in a bouchon, then we tend, by the time we get to the cheese course, there's really usually only two options, right? You're going to get Saint-Marcellin, which is a slightly bloomy, very fresh cow's milk cheese with a really lactic sort of milky flavor.
And they're small. They're
little. It's like a pocket, like a personal sized cheese.
A pocket cheese, yeah.
A pocket cheese.
That would melt in your pocket, like
right.
the silly putty I put in my leggings pocket when I was 8.
It would be exactly that.
Yeah.
It would be unpleasant.
It never came out, and it ruined an entire load of laundry.
That's what you would do if you put Saint-Marcellin in your pocket. Just eat it. Or then the other option that you often get is cervelle de canette, which is a beaten sort of fresh cheese.
Let me fix this.
Please fix it.
Cervelle de canut. Canut are the silk workers. And I actually live in an old canut apartment, and they're called the canuts, the apartment, but it was also the name for the silk workers who made the silk in Lyon.
Exactly. And they all lived in La Croix-Rousse, where Caroline lives.
Yep.
Which is the most beautiful area of Lyon, and everybody needs to go there. It's so gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's a fresh cheese. The cheese itself is very mild and simple, and so they season it with fresh herbs and garlic, and you find it in all of these bouchons as kind of the last, either the dessert or the pre-dessert, depending on how long you're going to keep eating. So if we're going with pure tradition, that's the cheese that I would think of is, you've had this salad that has a ton going on. It's got the bitter from the greens. It's got the acid from the dressing. It's got the richness of the egg and the smokiness of the bacon. So you want something that has a lot of flavor that's not going to end up like sort of petering out in the face of all of those, insane flavors. But it's also something that's a little bit like it's creamy without being super in your face. It's not like oozy or anything like a brie. So I feel like it's a nice sort of textural distinction. And, in the same way as what grows together goes together, who am I to argue with tradition? Those are the sorts of things that often get paired together. But then I have to say, since I like to make things difficult for myself and have been famous for doing that for my entire life, I decided to do one better and just think in terms of flavors, if I was completely divorcing Salade Lyonnaise from where it comes from, what would be an interesting cheese to finish with after you've eaten the salad? And I was thinking about those big hunks of bacon and all of that rich smokiness, and then also about the fact that cervelle de canut is nicknamed the meat of the poor. And so it was something that you would eat when you couldn't afford meat. And I thought about another cheese that was invented as a meat replacement, which is washed rind cheese. So washed rind cheeses were invented by monks in the 10th century in the north of France to be something that you would eat on days when you were fasting and you weren't allowed to eat meat. And so the idea is that you take a cheese and you wash the outside crust in a brine solution, and it makes this sort of funky, sticky orange crust grow on the outside. It makes them really smelly. It makes them the kind of cheese that you do not want to transport on a train at the risk of, angering your fellow train passengers. And so I thought that a fun cheese to pair with this could be époisse, which is a washed rind cheese from Burgundy, so not at all from Lyon, but that is washed in Marc de Bourgogne, which is the local grappa of Burgundy. And it's rich and it's creamy and it has this sort of meaty chewiness to it, kind of almost, until it falls apart and then it just sort of runs all over the plate, which is why it comes sold in a wooden box. Most époisse is pasteurized these days, which is a major bummer. So be sure to seek out a raw milk one if you want the fullness of the funk. But if you are looking for something a little more muted, either a pasteurized époisse or its cousin, which is called a trou du cru, which is impossible to say because it requires a fronted and a back rounded vowel, which is linguistics nerd for really hard to say. And it's also very tiny. So it's another pocket-sized cheese like the Saint-Marcellin. But again, don't put it in your pocket. You'll never be able to wear those pants again. But it has that kind of like bacony, meaty kind of flavor to it without being quite so stinky. So I'd say if you're going to go with tradition, go with the cervelle de Canu, which you would have to make at home. You can't really buy it ready-made. You'd buy the fresh cheese and you'd mix it with all of the herbs and seasonings yourself, or an époisse if you want something a little stinkier.
Didn't you already pair something with an époisse on this podcast?
Did I?
I think you did.
Did I not pair something with maroilles?
I don't know. I honestly think those cheeses are too much for me. The like
the really, washed ones.
Yeah, I can't. Like Munster too. Ugh.
Oh my god, I love it.
No, it's the same thing as andouillette. It smells like a toilet. But I know époisse is actually mild when you taste it, sort of.
Yeah, especially if you're like ever sitting with an époisse and like you have an époisse maker in front of you and he's like, please try my cheese, and you're like, I really can't. It smells like a toilet. Just take the rind off.
I wouldn't say that. I would never say that.
Just take the rind off, and the inside actually tastes like milky and creamy and kind of sweet and delicious. It doesn't taste like it smells. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. And now back to Chez Toi.
Well, I do need to step in here and talk a little bit about the cervelle de Canu, because this is a dish that it's the silk worker's brains is the translation. It's the brains of the silk worker.
Have you ever eaten actual brains?
I think so.
Yeah. In France, they definitely eat everything. So,
maybe I haven't. It's possible.
Okay.
But Saint-Marcellin, I think so. In a bouchon, you would actually have cervelle de Canu as, I think, as a starter usually. It's like an apéro, and then you would have the Saint-Marcellin or a half a Saint-Marcellin as your dessert instead of dessert. And Saint-Marcellin, I don't know if you can get that at all in America because it's not pasteurized ever. I don't think. I think that's part of the appellation. So that is a hard one. But when you're here, you have to eat it, and it's great. And they can get funky. I mean, they can develop some funk on them if they're a little bit older. But the cervelle de Canu is a really great thing that you can totally make at home. I think if you were in America, you would use probably cottage cheese. It wouldn't be exactly the same. But here we just use fresh, it's like faisselle is what it's called, the fresh cheese. But if you were in America, cottage cheese would probably be the closest thing. You just mix it with chopped shallot, a clove of garlic, some salt, and then some parsley chives, and that's it. And it's really good. It's really good on bread, crackers. Eat it with a spoon. I think that is a great one. And I think in terms of a wine pairing, if we're talking about Lyon and this dish and the cervelle de Canu, it's got to be Beaujolais. I don't know if I've already used a Beaujolais, but Beaujolais is the greatest. I was there yesterday, actually. And I think for this, we either want like just a classic Beaujolais Village, nothing fancy, or even a Côte de Rhône. You just want something this is like a dish that you have for lunch or dinner that is sort of a complete meal that is kind of healthy, but still kind of indulgent. And so I think there's something about the Lyonnais food and the bouchon food that is very rustic, but also really was for the workers. The idea of the bouchons were places that workers could go and eat during this kind of, industrial revolution moment and a little bit after that. And I think that having just table wine, a good solid table wine, and that in this region for sure is going to be a Côte de Rhône or a Beaujolais. And both of those are going to be pretty light reds that are fruity and easy to drink and cheap. So that's what I'm going for sure. Beaujolais is going to be 100% Gamay, which is notoriously light. And Côte de Rhône is going to be mostly Grenache. Syrah, Mourvèdre, maybe Cinsault, Carignan, but mostly Grenache.
Mm-hmm. And talk to me a little bit about Beaujolais, because I think that a lot of people have this misconception when they hear Beaujolais, they immediately tack on this word nouveau at the end. But obviously not all Beaujolais is nouveau, which means new.
Most Beaujolais is not Beaujolais Nouveau. Beaujolais Nouveau it's a big thing here. I mean, basically Beaujolais Nouveau is Beaujolais wine that is made through a process called carbonic maceration, where they ferment the grapes whole. So they don't destem them. They put the whole grapes in the tank and then top it up with a little carbon dioxide. And it basically has an anaerobic fermentation where the juice ferments inside of the unbroken skins. And what that does is it's really fast. It's a lot faster than a normal fermentation. And it creates this like really juicy, fresh kind of candy fruit vibe. And it is very low in tannins. And so you end up with a very juicy light red. Now, in the 80s and 90s, Beaujolais Nouveau was extremely popular due to some very savvy marketing by Georges Duboeuf, who is a winemaker and negociant here. And it was this moment where for the first time ever, a lot of money flowed into this region that was historically a place that just made like kind of peasant wine and wine for the workers. And it wasn't somewhere that was that prestigious because it was in the shadow of Burgundy. And there were there were always some great houses there, like somewhere like Chateau du Moulin à Vent. But most of the wine in Beaujolais was pretty cheap and cheerful and was just, there to water the Roman soldiers and then peasants and workers. It wasn't the kind of wine that left the region. And so for the first time in the 80s and 90s, we really see it exploding around the world. And so everyone gets on this bandwagon because for the first time, these people actually have an opportunity to make some money. So everyone gets on the bandwagon. They make so much of it. They plant everywhere. They plant and make wine for quantity, not quality. So they're making wine for quantity, not quality. And basically by the end of the late 90s, everyone was over it. The wine writers who were also gaining in power were super over it. And they were like, this shit is garbage. 2001, the French government made Beaujolais producers dump 100 million cases of wine. I mean, they literally had to distill it because it was worthless because they made so much of it and it no longer had any market value. And basically the region still suffers from this bad reputation because they really did make a lot of really crappy wine. And they still do to some extent. There are obviously crappy bulk Beaujolais, but there is so much good wine in Beaujolais too. And it's still cheap. So you can get really good Beaujolais. There's a lot of young people. There's a lot of organic people really pioneering organics because when you don't have any power, when you have a bad reputation, at the beginning of the 2000s, for example, you're like, we can do whatever we want. They basically had a moment where they still had this sort of cash buffer and they were able to invest a little bit in figuring out what they wanted to do. And so there was a lot of pioneering in organic viticulture and organic winemaking and natural winemaking. And now you see a lot of young people who grew up there making really incredible small domain wines, playing a little more, making richer wines. So they're not just the like big fruit bomb, super light fruity Beaujolais. But I think there's a place for that too. I love Beaujolais Nouveau. It's really fun, it tastes like juice.
Yeah, and it's super fun.
Yeah, it will definitely get you hammered, it works.
100%. And it comes out every year on the third Thursday of November and everybody goes out and tries it. And,
fun.
there are some that taste like banana runts and there are some that taste like fun, fruity, juicy wines. And it's
so funny. The banana runt thing is real. That comes from a particular strain of yeast that is popular there. But yeah, you get this like banana candy thing that's kind of gross.
Yeah, it's a little weird, but I'm into it. I love it. Yeah, I love this sort of, Marie shared in her story that like she doesn't love to cook at home that much. This is like something that's super easy. Like all you have to do is buy the ingredients and throw it together. And, you've got your cervelle de canut that you maybe stir together while your lardons are frying and your egg is poaching. You've got your beautiful juicy Beaujolais and that's, Tuesday night dinner. Do it.
And that's it. It's the greatest. Thank you so much, Marie, for sharing this recipe with us and for giving me an opportunity to talk about Lyon.
To learn more about the recipe featured today and to see photos of the meal, please go to parisundergroundradio.com.
To have your recipe featured in an upcoming episode of Chez, please email us at parisundergroundradio@gmail.com.
You can find me, Emily Monaco, at Emily_in_France on Instagram and Twitter.
And you can find me, Caroline Connor, at Wine Dine Caroline on all the things.
This episode was produced by Paris Underground Radio. The music is A Night Alone by Track Tribe.
For more about the Chez podcast and podcasts like it, please go to parisundergroundradio.com.
Thanks for listening and bon appetit.